Hi, I'm Emma Rose Collingridge, Miss Universe Great Britain 2021, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is you're watching. It is Adrian from the Pageant Project. My special guest is a very familiar face with a new title, Emma Collingridge. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just realized when I was playing that intro, which you've seen many, many times, that the first person in that introduction is yourself. And myself sitting in this very position, having a bit of a laugh. Do you remember what that laugh was about?
On which occasion we laughed so much?
That was a Spago one.
I did think that might have been the Spago moment.
Yeah. I'm hoping, I'm assuming Spago hasn't come up in any of your interviews.
Funnily enough, it hasn't.
That place actually survived COVID. Funnily enough, of all the places to survive COVID, I don't know how Spago managed to, but it's alive and well.
I'm glad.
For those of you tuning in, if you have any questions for Emma, pop them in the comments or any messages of support. I'm sure she'll appreciate both. When are you actually leaving?
So I leave for the airport on Saturday, but I fly on Sunday. It has all come round incredibly quickly.
Hang on, you leave for the airport on Saturday, and what you're saying, like at an airport hotel, or it just takes you that long to drive? Okay.
No, I'm staying at a hotel because I have a very early flight.
How early?
I haven't actually worked out what time I need to be there to start the check-in process. I think my flight's like around 7:30ish.
So you probably, in Australia, we have to be there 3 hours before. So you're talking about like 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Yeah. It's going to be fine.
Are you any more of a morning person than you used to be?
When it's flying to Miss Universe, we can make an exception.
I'm glad to know there are exceptions for certain circumstances. For those of you watching who have no idea, Emma, I obviously know Emma very well. I don't know if it's obvious, but I know Emma very well. I mean, she stayed with me. God, it was almost 2 years ago. Geez, yeah. Before COVID wreaked havoc on the world, Emma came over to Australia for 2 months. Couldn't get rid of her. How long did you actually stay here for? Was it 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks? I can't remember now.
I can't remember exactly. I think it was just shy of 2 months.
It's a long time.
I kept extending my trip while I was out there, didn't I?
Yeah. Let me just zip over to the comments. We got Miss Galaxy Sutton in Ashfield saying hi. I'm going to assume that it has sunk in that you're actually Miss Universe GB. Or, I mean, how are you feeling? So since we last talked, you've won your national title. You're now about to jet over to compete in literally the biggest pageant in the world / universe. What has the whirlwind of emotions been like?
I was only having this conversation with someone the other day, actually. And so as soon as I was crowned Miss Universe Great Britain, obviously there was the excitement, the overflow of emotions then. The following day was, serious meetings, signing contracts, talking about what's going to happen, trying to get plans in place, and did a photo shoot. But the few days after that, I was so exhausted that I didn't have the capacity to process that I'd won Miss Universe Great Britain. And then all of the paperwork and all of the things that I needed to be doing started coming in. And so I don't think I've really had a chance to properly process the enormity of what I've actually managed to do. and what I'm now going to do.
Let me ask you this. Did you have any expectations that you were going to win?
No. So I don't, you probably know, but the previous 2 competitions I've competed in, I've always won on my second attempt. I've never won on my first. And I really went into Miss Universe Great Britain with the mindset that, you know, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's going to happen for me this year, then that's amazing. And if it's not, I'll come back the next year and try again. But I was so focused on really enjoying the experience, getting to know all of the other girls. And again, yeah, really just embracing the experience and all of the opportunities that came off the back of that, that when I was there, it didn't feel like a competition. It felt like a girls' weekend with people that I'd known for years. And then I was the last person to be called into the top 5. And while I was standing there waiting for my name to be called, I had it in my head. I was like, you know, if it's not meant to be, you know, that's okay. You've still had an amazing time. And then when my name was called, I then had to really refocus and try and get in the zone of, okay, now I need to be focused on what I have to do next, which is answer the top 5 question. And those questions this year, Paula warned us and said that they were going to be a bit more tricky than usual.
Yeah.
And she wasn't lying. We were all stood there. I think we all came off stage and looked at each other and said, that was really difficult. What just happened? And I don't think any of us were particularly happy with how we'd answered our question. And then when we were lining up backstage before the curtain was then going to come back up, I had this little, I don't know how to describe it. I had this little voice in my head that kept saying, no, you've not won. It's fine, but you've not won. And then I had this little energy, this little force behind me that kept pushing me forward and giving me that hope and telling me, no, actually, I think you might have. And when we were then in that lineup and second runner-up was called, first runner-up was called, and then it was me left with Steph and Charlie, I was like, have I done this? Like, what's happening? So when my name was called, I was in shock. But yeah, I never for a moment thought that you're never guaranteed a win, and you can never go into a competition thinking that you have won. Obviously, it would be amazing to, but that wasn't what I went into that competition to do. And that wasn't my mindset going into the competition. And ultimately, I think that's why I, in the end, did come away with the title.
Can you, I remember, because I've talked to Christina Chalk, who obviously made the top 5 along with you, your first runner-up. She said she absolutely, I didn't see the final questions. She said she absolutely screwed her answer up, but halfway through she was like, I'm going to have to do something. So she just decided to start speaking passionately. What was your question? Do you remember? You must remember, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so my question, so I was listening to all of the other girls' questions, and there were questions about gender-based violence, the COVID vaccine, feminism, and I was thinking, yep, okay, if I get any of these questions, another one with social media, I was like, yep, I can answer any of these questions. I walked up to the microphone, and my question was about the Black Lives Matter movement, which of course seen so much about in the news. Mine was specifically relating to football players and sports players taking the knee and what managers could do to prevent the abuse that they then received as a result of that. And I just had to speak from the heart in that moment. That's all I could do. And backstage, everyone else had their phones with them so they could get messages and feedback from people there and then as to how they'd done. But I'd left my phone up in the dressing room, so I had no clue. I was just left to panic and think in my brain of all these different scenarios and how I think it might have gone. And then when I actually went up to the dressing room afterwards, after I'd been crowned, I saw all the messages and they were like, you smashed it, you knocked it out of the park, well done, that was amazing. I was like, had I have had that phone with me down backstage, I could have seen and not had that worry.
Do you actually remember what your answer was, or were you so in the moment you couldn't remember? No, okay.
The last thing I said was that all humans deserve to be treated with respect. That's all I remember saying.
I think that's a fair enough. Have you seen videos or anything of your answer, or you can't remember? No?
I don't know if there is a video, to be honest. I think there might be, and I don't think I'd want to watch it back.
Fair enough. trace for us, because obviously when I interviewed you the first time, it was for another pageant, and this is now the third title that you've won. And even back then, I jokingly said you have to stop winning because there'll be no titles left for anyone else. And like now, it's just literally true. But can you? Because I remember when you first entered pageants, you were probably not in the best place. Can you trace for us how you've grown or what lessons you've learned over the stages of each pageant? So you entered the first one, what did you learn? You entered the second one, what did you learn? And now, how have you changed now?
Absolutely. I think I'd like to preface by saying that I think what made it so special is, like I said before, this is the first competition I've won on my first attempt. And what made that so special was that I truly came to this pageant as my truest, most authentic self. I really showed up as Emma, and I won as Emma, not as the person I thought the judges wanted me to be. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned throughout my entire time competing in pageants. So going back right to the beginning, I competed in Miss Teen Great Britain because I needed to rebuild the confidence that I'd lost through bullying, through being bullied at school. And that was an amazing experience for me. It truly did build my confidence. It was what really got me into volunteering and the benefits that has, not just on an individual, but the community as well. Galaxy, when I entered Galaxy, I was not in the best place at all. I was in an incredibly toxic living situation at university. I was not in the best place mentally or physically, and I placed my sole worth and value on whether or not I won that crown. And the second time, fortunately, I did, but I then still had to learn the hard way that was probably not the best thing that I needed in that time. And it was my trip to Australia that really taught me to learn to fall in love with myself again and understand that I am capable of achieving incredible things. And that time that I had on the other side of the world with some incredible people, such as yourself, really taught me who it was that I wanted to be. It made me more in tune with my passions and even more energized to give courage to the dreams that I had, such as competing in Miss Universe. And now here I am.
So basically what you're saying is it's because I kicked you out of a plane.
Pretty much.
Since you preface
I kicked you out.
Oh, that's right. I went out first. So for those of you who are like, what the hell are you talking about? Emma, when she was down here, decided she wanted to do a skydive. And I'm sure you remember this, but for the people watching at home, I wasn't going to go because I've done skydiving before. And the other time I knew that I had gotten a little bit sick, not from the actual diving, but the twirling around afterwards, because you circle in order to hit your landing zone. And so I wasn't going to go, drove Emma there. And then I just sort of jokingly said, oh, it's too late to go up now, isn't it, to the people working there. And go, actually, no, we've got one spot left. That was a mistake. So then I dove, as the Americans like to say. You were very prepared, though. You were up early the morning before.
I couldn't sleep. I was so anxious about it. But you, the whole time, kept trying to reassure me with these words of wisdom, made it sound like you were going to be completely fine. Then as soon as we landed, you didn't quite look so clever, did you? You didn't feel very well.
I don't know what I looked like. I just knew I felt nauseous. And it was exactly the same as before. It wasn't the diving out. The diving out, for those of you at home who've actually jumped out of a plane, preferably with a parachute, the first part happens really, really quickly because you're strapped. It's tandem skydiving, so you're strapped to someone and they tilt your head back, and then it's kind of like 3, 2, and then they just shove you out. They don't give you the one, because if they give you the one, you'll hold onto the sides of the door. They just kick you out. And that first part, can you remember I've already asked you about your answer to the final question. You can't remember that. Can you remember the sensation of being booted out the plane?
Yes. Yeah, it really did feel like you were falling for about 2 seconds, and then it got to a point where it was just it was incredibly bizarre, but it was such an incredible feeling.
Do you want to give the people watching at home your tips for how to look queen-like when you're diving out of a plane, because you did that research, and I've never seen a photo of anyone coming out of a plane who looks so dignified, but you go for it. It's your area of expertise.
Because my hair is so thick and it knots so easily, I was just researching, what is the best thing to do with your hair to stop it knotting? And it was to put braids to braid the front of your hair, and that if you smile, like your cheeks don't then like flap around in the wind. But I was smiling anyway, just because I was enjoying the experience so much. But yeah, they're my
fun times. Yeah, fun times. So if you want to look good whilst diving out of a plane, braid your hair and smile like you mean it. Stacey over in America has said, congratulations on sharing your true self and having the best reward of being you and being validated. Hello, Stacey. I just want to ask you a serious question for a sec. So in your bio, I know, and you've talked about Medusa before, and it said after writing her dissertation on rediscovering Medusa's origins, Emma was inspired to use her voice to stand up against gender-based violence. Now, I am not terribly familiar with Medusa's story, other than knowing that she was the one, wasn't she, that if you stare at her, you turn to stone?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so just for the people watching at home, because I know that you mentioned that on several occasions, and obviously it was an important part of your life because it was your dissertation. Fill us in with the sort of the details of that story and how it led you to your advocacy that you have now.
So I knew when I was writing my dissertation that I wanted to do it on something a bit more supernatural. I originally looked at the witch trials, and in my research of that, really understood that it was just people blaming other people for things because they were jealous, was ultimately what it boiled down to. And then I always had a love of Greek myths. And when I was doing my research of different Greek myths, a prevalent theme that came up was the silencing of women. Mm-hmm. And then when I looked to Medusa, who arguably is one of the most infamous but misunderstood characters, I knew that I had to finally give her a voice of her own, because all of the tales of Medusa are coming from people talking about her rather than her expressing what happened. So, I mean, I'm trying to give you an abridged version because I could go on about her forever. But Medusa, actually, we are shown her from a very patriarchal lens. We aren't shown the real story, and we also aren't shown that her origins predate Greek myth. So she's actually a part of a triple aspect goddess with Athena and Athena's mother Metis in Libya. That's where she originally was founded, pretty much. And then when the Greeks invaded all of these different countries, they took with them gods and goddesses from all of these other different cultures from the places that they took over. And then the Greeks had before that, society was goddess centered. There was a very matriarchal energy and leadership, but the Greeks were very patriarchal. And when they invaded, they took over, and they had a very heightened fear of death. And as Medusa was the final aspect of this triple aspect goddess, she ruled over death, but also rebirth. And so a lot of the death figures were demonized, and a lot of these happened to be women. So that's why we see so many women crossed with animals to make them seem more hideous, effectively. So you get the sirens that kill men in the sea, and Medusa, who's the half snake, half woman. And then I'm trying to think of, I really researched into why and the origins of her gaze. And it's actually a really well-known and generic known thing that if you look any deity in the face, you would likely be killed. That's with any god, goddess in any culture. But also because Medusa was linked to rebirth and the secrets of femininity, there's a lot of links to menstruation, and it was said that Medusa had her blood was menstrual blood. And in a lot of cultures, even today, men or women, while on their periods, are not allowed to engage in the same family traditions. They're put in sheds away from family. There was one saying that was like, the look of a menstruating woman could curse a man or turn him to stone. And I think that that's where those links really came from, and why we have such a taboo around menstruation even today, because ultimately the myths and the stories that were told back then still bear so much relevance and semblance to the culture that we have today.
Well, if it's that embedded in culture going back thousands of years, and you have to assume that there are some parts of our culture that we don't examine that closely or take for granted that are still probably quite patriarchal. Well, I mean, that's beyond a hypothetical. I mean, that's fact. And hopefully we're addressing that as we speak. But I mean, in terms of your advocacy and gender-based violence, I think one of the things that's become very prevalent, especially recently with the Taliban retaking, and the Taliban famously have this very patriarchal policy where they won't even let women be educated. You can't go to school. You're not allowed out of the house except if you have a man with you. Do you see us progressing towards a more equal society as from a global perspective? I know in the UK, in the US, and Australia, it's always a talking point. That doesn't mean necessarily the steps are being taken, but at least we're talking about it. But then when you look at the world as a whole and you see the resurgence of the Taliban, and there are still people who fundamentally believe women are a subspecies, an inferior species, I guess I'm asking, do you see any hope for us as a race?
I think it does go back to what you said. We as a society, we have come so far, and a lot of that is in our awareness of understanding issues, not just necessarily with gender-based violence, but also environmental issues too. We have the awareness now to recognize that these are issues, but what is missing now, like you say, is the action and the steps to really change and make change surrounding those issues. But there is definitely hope because we have that awareness, and it's only when we talk about these kinds of things that social change can happen.
Let's dig into your draw the line advocacy for just a second. Now, when we had you on the podcast, we talked quite a lot about it, because I think all of us were invested in it and thought it was an amazing advocacy and an amazing idea. But for those of the people watching at home, whether it's live on the replay, who aren't so familiar with it, can you give people the overview of #DrawTheLine?
Absolutely. So it's a campaign that I founded after experiencing sexual violence myself, but also as a result of gaining the courage to use my voice through giving Medusa a voice of her own. And it's really about empowering women, not only with personal security skills, but to know that we can and we will transmute our pain into power, while simultaneously educating wider society on the importance of bystander intervention in preventing harmful behaviours, beliefs, and attitudes from escalating to violence. So I set up and teamed up with specialists in their field to run a self-defense and conflict management workshop for women that was in aid of A Sisterhood. This was National Lottery funded. So all of the money went to an organisation called A Sisterhood, which seeks to support, empower and protect women, not just in Great Britain, but across the globe. Yeah. And again, on my Draw the Line campaign, we got in the end, was Olympians for Great Britain from pageant delegates and supporters from all corners of the globe to take part in the Draw the Line campaign to really put out the information about bystander intervention and how to do that safely and be a safe and active bystander to as many people as we could, which was so incredible.
And you mentioned a few things there, and I just want to bring up the bystander intervention because there are a few different campaigns and advocacies, and they're all worthy advocacies. But specifically, what really interested me in your campaign was the bystander intervention part of it. So can we just dig into that? What do you mean by bystander intervention, and why is it so important?
Absolutely. So teaching women self-defense skills is obviously amazing so that we can know these things, but it's preventing an action that's already happened. Whereas if we can actually stop that from happening at the root by preventing that violence, those harmful behaviors and beliefs from escalating to that point, it would be so much better. So bystander intervention, we are bystanders every single day. Every day events unfold around us that we are a bystander to, and choosing to be an active bystander is choosing to put a stop to those behaviours. So there are the 5 Ds of bystander intervention to make it a little bit easier. One of them is being direct. This isn't always the safest option, but it could be, even if it's just not necessarily talking to the perpetrator, but the person being targeted and asking them if they're okay, getting them out of that situation. Another one is distract. So whether it's you pretending to dropping your drink or something, or asking them for the time to try and change the subject to de-escalate the situation and hope that maybe that person can then get away, or if it's an argument unfolding, that's then de-escalated. It's delegating. If you don't feel safe doing those kinds of things, find someone else who can help you, whether it's a person in authority, a security guard in a shopping centre or in a supermarket, a police officer if there's one around. Delegate. There's documentation. So some people find it helpful to have video evidence of what happened. But of course, if there are so many other people around filming, you might want to think that another intervention method might actually be more effective in that situation. And then there's delay. So you don't necessarily have to get involved in the situation as it's playing out, but you can go over to the person that was targeted after the situation has happened, ask them if they're okay, let them know that you're there for them, the services that they can speak to should they need to. And if we can do this, and some of the more direct things is even just calling out your friends if they say something sexist, racist, homophobic, calling them out and letting them know that you're not actually okay with them saying that and that it's wrong. That will go a long way to actually prevent violence from escalating.
Kudos for remembering what the 5 Ds were whilst you were explaining them. I know that's not easy. That's impressive. The distract one was one that really caught my eye, because I know and I've seen some women advocating for self-defense programs, and that's a given. Absolutely, it is an amazing idea for a woman to be able to physically defend herself. But sometimes the size difference is just so big, men versus women, that it's a much smarter idea, rather than, confronting them, to sort of distract them. And as you said, just ask them the time. Even it's not saying that you need the time, but just to distract them, because very often from what I've seen, if you come at it this way, the other person will, you fight fire with fire, so to speak. That's not necessarily the smartest way to do it. So I really love the distract. Well, that's an amazing campaign and advocacy. Are you going to be taking that message, I would assume so, over to internationals?
Absolutely. And kind of going back to something you just said. So although we can't, because of the pandemic and private lives being so busy, we haven't been able to run another workshop. I have now started a special little project with the same people that I teamed up with to run the workshop, and actually had a call with them yesterday evening to put the plans in place. And we were actually saying self-defense is so glamorized these days, whereas actually the whole point of self-defense is to not need to know how to defend yourself. It's to be able to de-escalate that situation enough to the point where it doesn't become violent. And there's a difference between someone, having a bad day and bumping into you, for example, as opposed to someone who's actually going out of their way to be an attacker. And if you meet someone with aggression straight away, you're only going to speed up the process that it's going to take for that person to become aggressive towards you. Whereas empathy goes a long way in preventing situations like that. But if someone is going out of their way to harass and attack you, it's understanding their intent, their motivation, and their opportunity. So, if for example, someone grabbed you in the arm and was trying to pull you into a dark, empty street, or trying to pull you into a van, that their intent is probably going to be to harm you. And in that situation, a lot of self-defense is actually innate. It's primitive. It's something that we already have within us. We would know how to get ourselves out of that situation more often than not. And it's when we start learning techniques that you have to practice and practice and practice until something becomes right, where self-defense should actually be, in the first instance, about preventing that from even happening in the first place. But secondly, trusting your instincts.
Well, I mean, the simple instinct to just scream. I mean, that's hugely effective. I mean, we so often are, we have to fit into polite society, so I'm not going to be noticed. But if something is happening that's untoward, and you just scream or you make a ruckus and everyone stares, that's much more effective than necessarily fighting fire with fire or force with force. Here's a familiar face. Rebecca Jane has said, "Well, hello, you two. Hope you're doing well,
Hello.
Rebecca." Ralph, who tunes into a load of my interviews. Hello, Ralph. He said, "Good afternoon." And Rebecca has also said, "So much love for you, Emma. So proud of you. Go get that universe crown, girl." You
Sadly giving it
mentioned,
my all.
I don't doubt that, you mentioned the E word, empathy, which is an extremely interesting word to me. I keep saying that I think that's something the world needs more of, is empathy. And over the pandemic, there were more than a few people who didn't show a lot of empathy, who didn't de-escalate. I'm not sure if it's getting any better, whether calmer heads are prevailing now. But it seems that we're living in a world that's very polarized. You're either with me or you're against me. Like, you either agree with everything I say or I'm going to tear strips off you. And I know, as you've identified, you went through some horrific bullying yourself. Do you think that as a society, this is a very big question, but do you think that we're gaining more empathy as a society, or do you think we're starting to lose sight of it because so much of social media, and it's so easy for people to attack people on social and have no idea who they really are or take something out of context? So just talk to me about empathy a little bit. Do you see it growing? Do you see it something as we need more of?
I definitely think it's something we need more of. I think the pandemic has definitely hindered our ability to be able to communicate with one another effectively, let alone with empathy. And again, like you say, with social media, nowadays you can find arguments for whatever it is that you want. So easily it can become an echo chamber of our own thoughts, our own opinions. And instead, we really do need to be more active and mindful in trying to have a more open mind, to try and understand different ways of looking at things. And like you say, to be more empathetic to hearing other people's opinions. And, you don't even have to agree with them, but even just by giving them the time and the space and the opportunity to voice their potentially differing thoughts, you might actually educate yourself and find something new that you didn't know.
And let me ask you one more question on that topic in terms of bullying. If the person you are now was able to have a conversation with the Emma pre Miss Teen GB, pre-Galaxy, what words of wisdom or what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell that version of Emma that the things that are happening to her are not a reflection of her, but they're more a reflection of the people that are doing those things to you and their own insecurities being reflected onto you. And that you are enough and that you need to keep driving forward. I used education a lot of my time to distract myself from what was going on. And again, I used sport too, which in my case made the bullying worse because I was then smart and sporty. But it really is finding your own thing that is yours, that you have control over, that you can find a way to express yourself in ways that you might not be able to, and to know that you are enough exactly who you are, and that what people are doing it's not a reflection of you at all.
To change the topic, have you finished packing?
I haven't even started.
Oh, why is it that every time I interview you before an international pageant, you haven't? The last time, I think it was 24 hours before you had to head overseas, and you still hadn't finished. You haven't started?
So my suitcases arrived yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And there are some suitcases laid out in the living room. But yeah, Because we're going to 2 different host hotels. We're going to Jerusalem and then we're going to Eilat. I'm trying to sort my suitcases as to what I might need for each place, but we don't have a schedule. So this is incredibly difficult to know what we might need. So at the minute, I think I'm just sorting out what I've got. And I still need to go through, I want to take pictures with all of my outfits, like fully styled, so that I can go through my phone when I'm told what it is that we're doing that day and be like, oh, I think this outfit will work, and then I can find it. So I'm going to do all that, and then I'll put everything in a suitcase.
Fair enough. I forgot about your UK phrases at the minute. That's such a British, or I don't even know if it's British or UK phrases. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. Just before we go to the final 10 questions, I imagine there are some people that you'd like to thank or give a shout out to. So, Emma Collingridge, the floor is yours for as long as you need. If you thank too many people, I'll play music to play you off the stage. But any shout out that you'd like to give friends, family, etc.
First shout out has to go to Paula, my director, because she's been so wonderful and so supportive throughout this whole crazy, hectic, busy weeks. To my parents, of course, they've just been incredible, from helping me sort outfits to my mum's been sat at a sewing machine all day, like altering things because I've lost a bit of weight because of the stress. So my parents just telling me to be true to myself. Again, my boyfriend, we don't get to see each other that much. He's actually going to be in Uzbekistan competing at the Commonwealth Championships in weightlifting on the exact same day of the Miss Universe finals. So we can't be there to support each other in person, but we are still there with messages and FaceTimes, and I cannot thank him enough for believing in me enough. I don't know if you know the story. So he had written me a card that had congratulations on winning Miss Universe Great Britain, and he'd written that before I'd even won. He brought that with him to the finals and gave it to me afterwards. He had that much faith in me, more faith than I had in myself, clearly. So yeah, thank you to him. And again, to all of the international fans. I know we're a small pageant country being Great Britain, but I've actually been overwhelmed by the amount of love and support and the messages that I've been receiving from international fans. So it's truly made this experience so much more special. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's been a part of this journey in some way.
Beautiful. All right, let's zip through these final 10 questions. Do you remember any of your answers to the final 10 questions? I remember some of them now that I'm thinking about it. Do you remember any of them?
I might remember a couple, but I'm trying to think what the questions were now.
I'm sure some will come back to you. All right, so final 10. Here we go. Number 1, what's your favorite word?
Empathy. I think that's very relevant from our conversation today. I think my favorite word at the minute has to be empathy, because we need more of it in this world.
Number 2, what is your least favorite word?
Hate. I think it's a very lazy thing to be able to hate people. It's just a horrible word.
Number 3, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
Right now, the prospect of representing Great Britain on the arguably the most prestigious stage in the universe.
And what turns you off?
The pandemic.
Okay. Hey, can I get an amen? Yes, for so many reasons I can agree with you on that one. All right. Number 5, what sound or noise do you love?
Laughter. I think that's always a nice sound.
There was a fair bit of that when you were over here in Australia. Number 6, what sound or noise do you hate?
It's still balloons, squeaks, anything like that. You can't do it.
Do you know that there's actually a genuine phobia of balloons? It's a diagnosed condition.
Oh, really?
It's called globophobia. And when I've interviewed pageant girls and they've had phobias, the most common one is balloons. I have no idea why. I don't know what's wrong with you all, but the most common phobia is globophobia, the fear of balloons.
Oh, wow. It's not necessarily, I don't necessarily have a fear of balloons. I just don't like the noise they make when you squeak them together. It's horrible.
Yeah, no, but there's actually a genuine phobia, believe it or not.
Oh.
Question 7, if you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
The ability to fly anywhere in the world, because there are so many places I would love to visit and travel to.
Question 8, what job would you like to attempt?
Miss Universe 2021.
Wow, that's a good answer. That's a very good answer. What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
A balloon maker.
A balloon. I don't know there's anyone actually sat there making balloons.
Like the people that make things out of balloons, like you make them into dogs and things.
The long balloon, and they tie them up, and okay. So you're basically saying you don't want to be a clown.
Yeah. That makes it simpler, yes.
I can't imagine you as a clown. Although last Christmas you were dressed up as an elf. I thought that was quite interesting. I'm assuming that elf costume won't make an appearance on the universe stage. So national costume, Christmas elf. Am I on the money? Am I close?
You know, it might actually make an appearance in the VT at Miss Universe. It was one of the videos I had to submit. I did mention that I dressed up as an elf to bring some festive joy back into some children's faces. But I never owned the elf costume. It was always a turn up, put it on, take it off, go home type of situation.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for a sponsor for an elf costume, I'm sure we can find you one. Anyone at home, if you can sponsor an elf costume, a Christmas elf costume, Emma will be happy to wear it at Miss Universe. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Thank you for my contribution for empowering other women to speak up about things that have happened to them, to have had the courage to speak up about important issues, but prevalent issues, and to have really driven social change in that area.
Perfect. Well, that's about it. I was going to tell you, Bob says hello.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Bob is my cat, for those of you wondering at home. Every time I send a photo of him to Emma, the first thing she says is, "Oh, he's so fluffy." Every time. He's so fluffy. He's molting like you would. I'm finding chunks of him. I think they're chunks. I think they're Bob. And I'm like, no, that's just a tuft of his fur, because it's summer here in Australia. And it's just losing chunks of fur everywhere. But I don't think I need to say this, but best of luck. Look, congratulations first. And now, best of luck. Be watching with a lot of interest, obviously, and I really hope you go there and enjoy yourself as well. I mean, I think it sounded like you did that with Miss Universe GB. It obviously stood you in good stead, and I remember from interviewing Nadia Sayers, who was Miss Universe Ireland last year. Her team kept impressing on her when you're on the stage. So if they have steps, when you're about to step down those steps and walk that runway, just take a moment to take it all in, because this is one experience you'll never get again. So I really hope that you take the time to, I know it's been manic, but take the time to actually enjoy it as well.
Absolutely. The past few weeks have been incredibly hectic and stressful at times and manic, but I think it's all going to be so worth it, knowing that as soon as I'm on that plane, I've done everything I can. I've got everything I need within me to do what I need to do. Hopefully make history for Great Britain. We'll see.
And you get to go on a plane again, which I haven't been able to do since last year. So that's going to be exciting. Well, I'll keep you on the line for just a second whilst I hang up with the audience. Thanks to everyone for watching, whether it's live or on the replay. And we will speak to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Sorority Access is now open. So if you'd like to join an amazing group of women and learn how to be the most powerful, confident, and impactful queen possible, head to thepageantsorority.com. I'll see you there and see you in the next video.